Everybody, welcome to the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. Dan Lobby, Mary Kay Cabot, Ashley Bastock with you here. Recording this on Friday about 4:20. Lance Reisland is going to come on the second half of this podcast, and he's going to talk a little bit of Todd Monkin. As you know, Lance has been a big Monkin guy. If you've listened to our Browns-Ravens previews, he's always liked what Todd has done. So he talked a little bit about Todd's scheme, some of the things he does, why he likes the fit here in Cleveland. We're going to continue to talk Todd Monkin, but we're going to start today by talking about the Twitter post that shook the earth in Berea, or shook the ground in Berea, whatever it was Hugh Jackson once said about Robert Griffin III. Mary Kay, obviously today was Todd Monkin arrival day, so a lot of Browns social content, Todd Monkin landing, walking into the building, all of that stuff, and then of course Shedeur Sanders, who was in the building, comes and greets Todd Monkin. Todd very excited to see him. I think we had mentioned this on a pod earlier this week, that we kind of remembered that story about the Ravens wanting to draft Shedeur Sanders and the Sanders family basically saying, nope, don't do it. The Browns take him a few picks later. So Todd Monkin reminded him of that today. This team is never boring. Shedeur Sanders is never boring, Mary Kay. And as we look for little breadcrumbs about who's going to be the starting quarterback for this football team, if Shedeur has a chance, this is one of those breadcrumbs. So, like I said, the Twitter post that shook the earth in Berea on what day is it? On Friday.
Well, Shedeur Sanders, as we know, is the content king, the absolute content king. And that is a major reason why he was added to the Pro Bowl games for Tuesday night. I'm sure they needed a ratings boost, and they figured what better way to do that than by adding Shedeur Sanders to the lineup. Most of the quarterbacks that could have replaced him, a lot of those guys are injured, couldn't make it, and he got added to the games, and I'm sure the NFL is ecstatic over that, and I'm sure it will draw the numbers. And I'm sure that the Cleveland Browns would love it too if Shedeur can live up to the potential that they think he has, and they can get away with starting a fifth-round quarterback who costs them pennies on the dollar over the next how many ever years. So he's in contention. He's definitely in contention. And I'm sure that Todd Monkin is coming into this with a very open mind. He's got Deshaun Watson right now. He's got Shedeur Sanders. He's got Dylan Gabriel. And I'm sure that the thinking in Berea is, let's see what you can do with our rookie quarterback, now our second-year quarterback, who went out there and went 3-4, did some exciting things in some games, and and showed some of the traits that lead the Browns to believe that maybe, just maybe, they're onto something with him, and that perhaps he can be something special.
Yeah, and just kind of thinking back to that whole story, obviously the Ravens liked him enough that they were thinking about drafting him. Now, similar to the Browns, it would have been in the fifth round. They would have passed on him multiple times, and then they would have taken him. I think it was 140 or 141 is where they were at. So, I'm sure that there was this pre-existing relationship with Todd Monkin, that Todd knows him. I don't know, maybe he knew him from his Georgia days even, and maybe he was recruiting him or something back then. Who knows? But I haven't done any research into that. But obviously,
no,
he did.
He got an offer from Georgia.
Okay, well, there we go.
When Todd Monkin was offensive coordinator there, he got an offer.
Yeah. So obviously, Todd has a pre-existing relationship with him, Ashley, which makes this all interesting. So, you try not to read too much into a team-produced social media video on January 30th. But like I said, we're all trying to kind of piece together little breadcrumbs here and figure out exactly, where does Shedeur Sanders fit in all of this? What does Todd Monkin really think of Shedeur Sanders? Does he view him as a starting quarterback? I don't know what he's going to tell us when we talk to him next week or at the combine or anything like that. But, it's just something to, and as we were going through this process, we heard that, would the Browns maybe float Shedeur Sanders as a possible starter to these candidates, right? So I don't know. I guess we'll see. This was just an interesting first interaction with Todd and Shedeur.
Yeah, and I mean, given the history and just given the situation the Browns are in, to me, it's almost not that surprising that at least on the surface level right now, there seems to be some positive feelings there. Because I think if you're the Cleveland Browns and you're going through this process and you're looking for a head coach, like, you are also having to be honest about what your situation is. And Shedeur Sanders is there. The other name, Deshaun Watson, is there. And you have the 6th pick in the draft. There's only a couple of guys. It's going to be hard to get one of them. We know it's hard to get these guys in free agency or trade for them, obviously. So, like, if you're Todd Monkin and you came in with this vision that suits the Browns roster, that all makes sense to me in terms of him ultimately getting the job. So, again, like, we don't know exactly what he's going to say about Shedeur Sanders, but I think from seeing this interaction on social media today, just like fans have, it's not surprising to me that this was positive. And again, the fact that the Ravens were interested in him, in adding him to their quarterback room behind Lamar Jackson, I'm not surprised that that came up again.
Yeah, and Mary Kay, I think more just going beyond, again, obviously the social media clip, but really going beyond that to kind of just that situation that Ashley kind of laid out. And the idea of having a 5th round starter, like you were saying, and what that can do for you financially, or even a 3rd round starter. I mean, I feel bad. We don't talk about Dylan Gabriel at all. He is still on this roster. He is still on this football team, along with Shedeur and Deshaun Watson. But having a guy who was drafted later in the draft as your starter is a financial boon, obviously. And for a team that needs that with a $230 million quarterback still on their books, they would take that. But I just think beyond trying to read into social media posts or anything like that, it's like, what is the situation the Browns are in? Like, what is their solution other than seeing what they have in the building? Maybe Malik Willis is available. Maybe it makes sense for them to sign him. Maybe it makes sense to trade for Mac Jones, although that's a guy that sounds like San Francisco wants to keep, and it would cost a lot of draft capital. There'll probably be some other names that come up as we go through. There always are. Gardner Minshew could be available. I joked about that the other day. That quarterback jersey could use a Minshew on it. It would just feel like it would be complete. But you do kind of look at this and say, okay, so what are your real options? You could draft Garrett Nussmeier maybe at some point, or Cade Klubnik, or somebody else. Like you start Carson Beck, who Todd Monkin knows very well. You start to look at the options, and it's kind of like, maybe they do just have to go with the default this year and kind of see what happens, and then circle back next year and see what they can do at the position if it doesn't work. I know nobody wants to hear that because you don't want next season to be a bad season, but you might just be a victim of the circumstance right now.
It's not a good year to need a new quarterback. The reality of the situation with the Cleveland Browns right now is that they have 2 unknowns. And I don't even really think necessarily that we can talk about Dylan Gabriel as being in the mix for the starting job. It seems like it is really down to Deshaun Watson and Shedeur Sanders at this moment competing for the starting job, unless Todd Monkin goes to them and says, I've watched all the film and you have to go get me Malik Willis, or I've watched all the film and you have to go out and get Daniel Jones, or whatever he decides to do. We know he likes a dual threat running quarterback. We know that about him. We've seen the clips. We know that he just got done working with Lamar. He understands and sees the value in making those off-schedule plays. But I think Shedeur can make enough of those off-schedule plays. I think he's proven himself to be someone that can extend plays and use his legs very effectively. So I think he fits into that category. But it's going to be incumbent upon Todd Monkin now to go out and absolutely 100% decide if he thinks that he has what he needs in the quarterback room right now. And as you guys have mentioned, there aren't a whole lot of other options. There aren't any glaring better quarterbacks just waiting to come in and take this job right now. So he might have to work with what he has right now. And he is a good developer of quarterbacks. I mean, he got the best and the most out of Lamar Jackson. In 2024, Lamar Jackson threw 41 touchdown passes against 4 interceptions, right? He got that out of Lamar Jackson. His first year with Lamar Jackson, he coached him to an NFL MVP award, his second career one. So he knows how to coach quarterbacks. He knows how to do that. He got a really nice season out of Baker Mayfield here in the midst of all the chaos and madness in 2019. He did nice things with Jameis Winston, a 4,000-yard season with Jameis Winston in Jameis's second season in Tampa Bay. So this is a coach who's going to be able to get something out of Shedeur Sanders if it's there to be had. He's going to be able to do it. He knows how to do it. And he will also know what he's going to need to surround him with. He's not going to kid himself and think that Shedeur can exist in a vacuum and not need some really good pieces around him. So he will be very instrumental in helping to add to the pile, to add to the pass catchers, to add to the offensive line. He's going to be a big, big part of that. But it's going to be up to him to say, yeah, I think we can win with this guy or these guys, or we need to go in another direction. And if they do need to go in another direction, they might have to wait until next year. They just might have to wait until next year. They might have to make the best of what they can do with what they have. And maybe that would be pretty good. Maybe Shedeur Sanders will be a whole lot better than he was this year when he has an offseason with the team, when he has first team reps in training camp for the first time, and when he has a much better supporting cast. Maybe he will be way better than he was last year.
Yeah, and I think the other part of it too is, we've talked so much about everything this offense needs. And you're always working with limited resources in the NFL. You only have so much money to spend. You only have so many draft picks to use. And so if there isn't a surefire quarterback that they like, and it seems like Fernando Mendoza is going to go number one, they're not going to have a chance at him. If there's not a surefire guy that they want to try and move up to get or take at number 6, maybe you are better off spending your money on offensive line, wide receivers, really beefing up that offense, seeing if you have a guy in Shedeur Sanders or, maybe whatever stage of his career Deshaun Watson is in, seeing if you have a guy that can be a game manager for you for a season, or, shows, in Shedeur's case, show some signs of development, because I think Todd can maximize whatever Shedeur is. And that doesn't mean he's going to be Lamar. That doesn't mean he's even going to be Jameis. I just think those guys are more talented than Shedeur, but Todd can find something in there with that accuracy and that mobility. If there's something in there, I think he'll probably be able to find it. So maybe you are in a good spot where you can just sort of build everything out. I mean, we have Browns fans that yell at us every year when we talk about drafting quarterbacks, like, build the rest of the team. Well, good news. Maybe, Ashley, this is the build the rest of the team year, just based on the resources the Browns have and based on the needs they have and based on what's not out there at quarterback right now.
Yeah, you can't force it. Like, you can't force it and be like, we need to do something different. Like, we're just going to draft somebody here because, like, even though we don't trust that this is the guy, just to do it. And I think, look, there is some wisdom in that approach. It's basically what the Commanders did with Jaden Daniels. And, obviously this year he had injuries and couldn't stay healthy, but he came on as a rookie and looked pretty good because everything around him was already working and cohesive and figured out. And I think the really interesting thing about Todd Monkin is the way he embraces mobility of his quarterbacks. And I'm sure most of you listening to this podcast now have seen that clip of him floating around Twitter from some Ravens team meeting and talking about how the scramble drill is the play you're going to run the most in football. And you can't have an explosive offense without a mobile quarterback. And the reason to me it's so interesting, and we've discussed this, like, I think that Shedeur Sanders throughout the draft process didn't get enough credit necessarily for how mobile he could be. And I think you saw that at various points and the way he could do some off schedule stuff. And I think that's going to be a part of his development. But I think he has some abilities there that this time last year, people weren't considering to be the strongest part of his game. Everyone was more focused on the accuracy. So knowing how Todd Monkin embraces that could be really, I think, intriguing for the Browns as they go through this process.
So I guess as we kind of look at this quarterback situation and sort of what Todd is looking for, I mean, Mary Kay, do you think he would be more interested Because the question, I mean, the question right now is Shedeur, Deshaun, and it seems so weird to be talking about Deshaun Watson still in this mix, but I mean, that's the reality. Like, if he's healthy and he can be on the football field, and I mean, there's no way the Browns can really move on from him this year. And Andrew has said he's going to be on the roster. Well, then he has to be in the mix one way or another, right? So, is it almost better though for Todd Monkin to, I don't try to develop Shedeur Sanders or see what Deshaun Watson has left? Because I almost there's a part of me that wants to say I'd still kind of would rather see what Shedeur can become, even though I don't necessarily believe he's a long-term starter in this league. I'd still like to see it, but I don't know. Maybe Todd wants to bet on that talent that we know Deshaun Watson has that made him so great in Houston and made him a guy that the Browns gave up 3 first-round picks for.
Well, I think if Deshaun Watson is healthy and can demonstrate that he still has the skill set that he had when the Browns traded for him, then that's going to be very intriguing for a veteran coach like Todd Monkin. A longtime veteran coach like that, those guys seem to value that veteran experience, that veteran knowledge. The game has slowed down. We know that Deshaun Watson is the best quarterback on this roster right now if he's healthy. He's been through it all. He's seen it all. He's a 3-time Pro Bowler. There's a difference between a 3-time Pro Bowler and a second-year pro who has started 7 games in his career. They just hit differently. They just do. And he looked good in his 3 weeks when he came back and he practiced while his practice window was open. So I think he's got a tantalizing skill set that Todd Monkin will be intrigued by. But he is an unknown just as much as Shedeur Sanders is an unknown at this moment, because Deshaun Watson is coming off of 2 Achilles surgeries. And then before that, he was coming off of a fractured shoulder surgery. And that's a tall order to think that you can come back from all of that and be the quarterback that you were in 2020, the last time you played a full season of football and threw for more than 4,000 yards. It's a very, very tall order. Now, once again, because Todd Monkin is really a quarterback whisperer, if somebody can get Deshaun Watson back on the map, I think it's Todd Monkin. I think he can do it. I think he can have a similar effect to Deshaun Watson that Bill O'Brien had on him, given that he's healthy. Now, he's older now, too. But, hey, look, 31 is the new 21 in the NFL. 41 is the new 31 in the NFL. So a 31-year-old quarterback, that's not old these days. That is not old. His body is older than perhaps some NFL quarterbacks because of the surgeries that he's been through. But the corollary to that is that he hasn't gotten very much tread on his tires since 2020, right? He hasn't been as beat up just physically over the last 4 or 5 years that perhaps another 31-year-old quarterback would have been. So if they did a really nice job with the Achilles repair this time and really, really tightened that thing up really well and sewed it up nicely, and if the shoulder is much better than it was when he tried to come back on it in 2024, then maybe, just maybe, there might be something left in the tank. We don't know. And I maintain, and I maintained it back then, and I maintain it now, Deshaun Watson's arm was not ready to go in 2024. It wasn't. It wasn't ready to go then, just like it wasn't healthy at all throughout the entire 2023 season. So, or do I have the right season on that? No, the 2022 season.
22, hold on. 23 was the year that he initially got hurt.
Yeah.
And then 24 was the Ken Dorsey year when he ruptured the Achilles.
But okay, so 2023 was the fractured shoulder.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. It all blends together into one big,
So 2023, he wasn't himself that whole entire season, because I believe that he injured the shoulder more seriously in week 3 than anybody realized. Maybe it was the start of the fracture that ended up finally blowing in that Ravens game or whatever. I don't know if we'll ever know the truth on that, but he was not himself that whole entire year. And then he was not himself when he tried to come back in 2024 from the shoulder surgery. It was too soon. So we'll see what he's had now. Now he's had all of this time to let the shoulder heal, and he's had a full year to let the second Achilles repair heal. And by the time he gets to training camp or the start of the season, that'll be more like whatever, a year and a half, more than a year and a half on that. So if he's healthy, I think Todd Monkin can get something out of Deshaun Watson that most people do not believe is still there.
I mean, Ashley, time is a flat circle. We're right back. I mean, but again, if he's on the roster and he's out there practicing, some one way or another, he's going to be in the mix. But I do think one thing that Todd is going to do better, however this quarterback room looks, and I think he's going to make sure the setup is just more clear this year. I think that 4-man quarterback competition, it ended up not go. I don't know if it just didn't go the way they maybe thought it would. Obviously, there were injuries and things like that too that derailed it. But I think it was just too much, and they were trying to do too much. And with the 2 spotting and all of that, I know for us, just standing there trying to watch it and figure out what was going on with everybody, it was tough. So I know they're going back and watching the film and all that, but there's only so much time in a day, and there's only so many reps to go around. So I do think, if nothing else, Todd will run a more streamlined. Hopefully he'll say to Andrew, look, give me 2 guys, right? You want to have some developmental guys, that's fine. But this is going to be, if we're going to do a competition, it's going to be 2 guys, whether that's Deshaun and Shedeur, or Shedeur and a draft pick, Shedeur and Malik Willis, whatever it is, give me 2 guys. We're not going to do this tons of reps on 2 fields, because I think we've seen proof of concept that was too much to deal with last year.
Well, and I think the biggest issue was the fact that Kenny Pickett was a guy who got a ton of those early first team reps, and then he wasn't even on the team anymore by September. They had traded him. So I think that was also part of it, and added to this idea of, did they really have any clue what they were doing when they were trying to run this? And when you have 4 people, it's just too many moving parts. And I think it's important to note, it's not just about the quarterbacks and them needing those reps. It's also about your pass catchers. It's also about your running backs. It's also about your offensive line. It's about all the other parts of this offense, because everything's going through the quarterback, and each guy is going to be a little bit different. Each guy throws a little bit different of a ball. And I think, there are a lot of reasons that, like, Jerry Jeudy struggled this year, right? Or a lot of potential reasons, but he certainly wasn't helped, I don't think, by the fact that there was this 4-way quarterback competition. And I think it's going to be important, as Andrew has talked about, adding resources, using their resources on the offensive side of the ball to have that clearer picture and get that chemistry going earlier than they did last year.
I don't know what you guys are talking about, because the 4-way quarterback competition produced 2 Pro Bowlers.
That's true. You're right.
For this year. So
Touché.
What was the problem? 2 Pro Bowlers came out of that. Shedeur Sanders and Joe Flacco. So, maybe they were onto something. Maybe everybody should conduct a 4-way quarterback competition in camp.
That's true. That's a good point. Mary Kay wins this one. 2 pro. Who knew, by the way? Who knew that we were standing there watching 2 Pro Bowl quarterbacks competing for that job? Just
who knew?
Incredible stuff. All right. I think that's our time to wrap this up here on a Friday on the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. We're going to take a break. When we come back, Lance Reisland is going to join the show, and he'll share his thoughts on Todd Monkin. Welcome back to the Orange and Brown Talk podcast, and now we welcome on. We do it all the time during the season. We don't talk quite as much, at least on the pod. During the offseason, we welcome on Lance Reisland. Lance, how are you?
I'm doing very well, Dan. Good to be back, my friend.
Okay, well, I had to have you back, because for anyone who has listened to this pod for a long time, listened to our preview pod specifically, this team plays the Baltimore Ravens twice a year, and Lance has always been a big Todd Monkin fan, and a fan of the things that Todd has done with the Ravens. Before that, Let's just go back to Wednesday morning. The news breaks. Todd Monkin is the hire. What was your initial reaction?
Well, it's funny. I was very excited, and I got lots of tweets and lots of messages about almost like a level of disappointment, if to be honest with you, or just not. Let me say this: just not as excited as I thought people would be. And once again, I think it has nothing to do with Todd Monken. For me, it was about the process and how they went about it, and all those kind of things that I'm not privy to. But I was actually excited because for me, Todd Monk is a football guy, and I like football guys more than I like numbers guys. So I know he uses them and all that kind of stuff, but I've seen him coach a lot, and I like him, and I like his plans and what he does. So I was very excited, especially for the offense side of the ball, because he's basically going to get a ball of clay because it's going to be all new next year.
Yeah, no, look, people are going to be tired of hearing me say this, but I've kind of been making the point, like, if you just isolated the last 6 years of Monken's career, so we're not even talking Tampa, and that's he was pretty good in Tampa too. But if you just go the 3 years in Baltimore, the 3 years at Georgia, and if you just checked off all the things he accomplished, and you said, let's just say you said, you know what, that's Nate Scheelhouse's resume, people would be throwing a parade for this hire, right? A guy that was successful in college, won 2 national titles, got a Heisman finalist, came to the NFL, was a top tier coordinator with a top offense for 3 years, had a quarterback get an MVP award. I think just a lot of this excitement is in this process, fans get excited about the young guys, and I understand it. It's the same reason fans get excited about draft picks. You get excited about that possibility, and then they hire a 59-year-old coach that was here in 2019, and you're kind of like, oh, okay. But when you really dig into it, there's a lot to like about this hire.
Yeah, so two things stick out to me. One is the CEO part of this job. Everybody with Shieldhouse, with all these guys that they had, all super, really intelligent, young. I mean, I like Shieldhouse out of Illinois. I mean, I've broken his film down from Illinois. That's how old I am. So he is brilliant. He's working under Todd McVay. That's exciting Sean McVay, because he's, that innovative kind of thing. But for me, it wasn't about that. You need that, but Todd Monken is now doing a lot less offense than he did just 2 weeks ago. And now he's the CEO. So now he's got to he'll have input on everything, but there's so many things that pull you away from the actual football part of it. That's the thing that always worried me about the young guys. Not that they can't handle the offense, not that they can't be coordinators and things like that, but I think there's a learning curve with the amount of things you have to do as a head coach. Simply the daily fires you have to put out are enough to wear a head coach down. Even at the high school level, you can only imagine. I've said this to many of my friends who are still coaching, like the amount of stuff a head coach in the NFL must go through, because I even know at a high school level, it's day in, day out. You're always on. As a coordinator, you're in your own little booth, right? You got your own little guys, you got your stat. You don't have to worry about any of the nonsense. You get to do football. So, and then you go to the numbers, and people always talk, and we'll talk about this as we get along here, but he's even said it. He's a players over plays, guys. And if you've been listening to us, I've probably said that ad nauseum, 5,000-6,000 times on this podcast. So I love that about him. And you go back to Georgia, to the Ravens. And the one argument I have, Dan, is when people say, well, he had Lamar Jackson. Agreed. But I'm also going to tell you that every coordinator on both sides of the ball at every level of football is only as good as their players. And yes, he had a really good player in Baltimore, but he maximized it, in my opinion. So I'm excited for it. I think it's a good, he's a no-nonsense. Mary Kay, I was talking with Mary Kay, the word grizzled, I used, or she used. I think that's kind of reminds me of my dad, right? That old grizzled veteran who's going to come in and kind of take control of the little things that the Browns need, maybe.
Yeah, and I think, when you talk about the NFL, like, it's so much about, obviously talent matters a ton, right? When you have Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, it makes it easier, but that's kind of the point, right? Like, nobody's saying about, when they talk about how brilliant Sean McVay is, they're like, yeah, but he's got Matthew Stafford. I mean, Bill Belichick's the greatest coach of all time. And I guess there are some people who want to be curmudgeonly and say this, but most realistic people aren't like, well, he had Tom Brady. I don't know if he's that great of a coach. So, of course, you got to have talent. And that's Andrew Berry's job right now, is to acquire that talent. But being able to use that talent and maximize that talent, and also maximizing guys like a Rashad Bateman, or, some of these other guys, that the way he's used his tight ends, with Mark Andrews and aging Mark Andrews and the way they've developed Isaiah Likely. I mean, that stuff really matters too. So I think he kind of has the whole package, at its best. And we'll see if this all works. Who knows? Nobody knows. But at his best, we've seen what he can do with player development and also with maximizing really good players.
Yeah, if you want to look at a very overlying or like a unit plan as a teacher, right? The overlying theme is that he is going to maximize. He's not system based. He runs all kinds of gap schemes, all kinds of zone schemes in the run game. He's going to base that on the strengths of his offensive line. He's run all kinds of pass concepts, both vertically and horizontally. Going to base it on who needs touches and what his quarterback can do. The QB run game. He'll use it if the quarterback can run. He'll use it whatever the quarterback's. So you're gonna find these matchups. If you think about what he did against the Browns, all right, we can't block this defensive line because they get upfield. Let's trap them and counter them and power them and crunch them. Well, we can't throw the ball really well against Denzel Ward and Martin Emerson. Let's work against the linebackers and the safeties. Those are things that are not system based. That's the weakness of the defense. Here's our strengths, and we're going to do that. And that's really where the NFL and all levels of football, that idea, it's even if you go back like a lot of high school, it's very high school in theory, Dan, where they go, you know what, I got this many good guys, they're going to touch it all the time, and I got to figure that out. That's how that's what Sean McVay does. He's going to find a way to get Puka Nacua the ball, or Cooper Kupp when he was there. And all these other things matter, but that's the reality of it, is the best players touch it, and that's the key.
So let's talk about the quarterbacks, right? Obviously, the the clip that shook Brown's Twitter today was Todd Monkin meeting Shedeur Sanders for the first time, but not for the first time, but meeting him for the first time as Brown's head coach. Obviously, the Ravens, there was that report earlier in the year. This obviously confirms that the Ravens were going to try and draft Shedeur at 140, I think it was, and Shedeur said, no, we don't want to go to Baltimore. Well, now he's got Todd Monkin as his OC. So let's start with Shedeur Sanders. And we'll go through the other quarterbacks too. But Shedeur, how does he fit with what Todd Monkin likes to do, if he does?
Well, that's the thing about Todd Monkin. It's not really it's not when you think about Stefanski's offense. And I like Stefanski's offense, and I'm not doing the Stefanski was, get rid of him, because I didn't think it was right, to be honest with you. But when you think about a system, or you think about, if you think about Stefanski, it's wide zone with the boot, big personnel groups finding matchups. Monken these are my players. That's where you get the veteran type savvy, right? I'm going to figure out what he does best. Well, Shedeur works great out of the gun. I think he's good off play action. I think he's pretty universal what he does. Where he might not be an A+ in anything, I think Shedeur does a pretty good job with everything. He throws pretty well from the pocket. I think you can mix it up, and you can find matchups you want for Fannin and Junkins right now, because those are his core pieces. So I think the thing that's good for Shedeur, I will say this, the thing that is most impressive for me with Monken is the ability to make Lamar Jackson, who we already know was fantastic with his feet and throwing the ball on the run, the best maybe to ever do it in that type of setting, to a top 10 pocket passer, which makes Lamar an MVP kind of guy. So I think, the idea of what he could teach and how he teaches, and no NFL coaches are dumb. And I will say that all the time. It's like teaching. Some teachers get through to kids, some types of kids better than others. And that's going to be the ultimate test. It's not what you know as a coach. It's what can you teach your players? What can you teach your coaches? Because you can be the smartest guy in the world on the whiteboard, but if your players and coaches don't know it, it looks like a bad offense. So that's what kind of makes Monken kind of intriguing to me, and why I'm really excited, and why I've always been so high on him, is that he doesn't really work in a system. He works on, I got to find touches for people. And you know how I feel about touches in space. That's what you're going to get. You're going to get some cool stuff, because that's what he does.
So, I mean, this is sort of the same question, and maybe the answer is just going to be the same because of the flexibility. But when you look at the three quarterbacks on the roster right now, and this could change by the time we get to March, by the time we get to OTAs, this could all change. But right now, of course, it's Shedeur Sanders, it's Dillon Gabriel, it's Deshaun Watson. I don't think I'm forgetting anybody. Poor Dillon. Everybody forgets about Dillon Gabriel sitting over there. I know you don't.
I do not. Don't put me on that. Put me in my individual thinking, my friend.
Which of those three guys, though? Like, if Todd Monkin, he's sitting there now, he's spending the day, he's spending the weeks here watching film, getting to know these guys, getting to know these players. Which of those guys do you think he's going to look at and say, I could really do something with that guy?
Well, the answer is not the same, but I guess it kind of is. It's the idea of whatever their skill set is, or whatever they do best. Monken can adjust a little bit without taking away the foundation of the powerful run game and things like that. If you go back to, what they do in the gap schemes with Baltimore and how they use Lamar, and, you can run zone read or you can run an RPO. It's the same kind of thing. You're just trying to, with the base run, what do you have with it? Do you want the quarterback running? Do you want the quarterback reading a linebacker to throw a slant? There's different ways, but the run game is power. So you're running power. What you do off power is based off what the quarterback does well. And I think that's important, that I think all the quarterbacks will get to what their max is. And, those who are down on Dylan, I'm not. Just the same things you have about Shedeur. I thought he improved. The thing that Dylan was unable to do that I think Shedeur did a little bit better is just impact. And when people say numbers and all those kind of things, well, Dylan was better. And me being a Dylan fan, I will say the thing that I didn't like about Dylan is that he didn't have any vertical impact down the field. And that's what Shedeur did. And you saw some of those explosive plays, which Dylan's got to get to, or he'll never be a starter, but could be a solid backup. And in the NFL, you need two quarterbacks. So what's wrong with that? I don't know. But if you're going to say without injury, make no question, Deshaun Watson's the most talented guy in that room. Now, injuries tie into it. Everything else ties into it, but with a new voice in charge, I told everybody when the ripple effects of getting rid of Kevin is the defense probably won't be as good. Those who hate or love Shedeur or hate or love Dylan or hate or love Deshaun Watson, that all goes out the door. Now it's up to Todd Monkin. He'll decide. But pure passer wise, I've watched almost every throw of Deshaun Watson since he got to Cleveland. That was my first year with you guys. And I've watched every throw during 2 days. There's a big difference when Deshaun Watson throws the ball and most other, not just the guys on Browns. Deshaun Watson can spin it. And that's going to be interesting. He can stay healthy, maybe being a year away. But if it's truly a quarterback challenge, both Shedeur and Dylan are going to have to fight off Deshaun Watson because he's a talented guy. We'll see what happens. But now it all opens. So as promising as it is for Shedeur, it's also now opened the door for the other guys as well.
Yeah, and this is something people don't love to hear this, obviously. But this is a point Mary Kay has made. When you're standing out there watching practice, and even this last, the few weeks that we got to see when we're only out there for individual. And again, I will preface this by saying it's just practice, especially in the regular season when we're only watching 30 minutes. It has always looked different with Deshaun. Like that, you can do with that what you want when you hear that, but it always looks different with Deshaun. And if he's out there in OTAs and he's out there in training camp and he's healthy, you're going to see these little flashes. Now, obviously, a few years ago in training camp, it didn't always look great when they were trying to get that Ken Dorsey offense installed. So it doesn't always look awesome. But when you compare him to the other quarterbacks, you can just see it looks different with him.
Yeah, when you go once again, when you think about the ability to throw the ball deep, or there's so many factors that go into playing quarterback: recognition, feet and footwork, and run game, and fronts and coverages. So throwing it is not the only thing that goes into the evaluation. Obviously, I'm simply if you take out everything that's involved with the quarterback and you simply go to practice and watch these guys throw routes with the receivers. So where there's no coverage out there, there's no Skelly. We're just talking on air, no defenders. If you see Deshaun Watson throw a 15-yard comeback as compared to Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders, and I'd be willing to say all the guys, I saw Jalen Hurts throw here, and I've seen a lot of other guys, and I saw a Super Bowl quarterback this week throw there. So I've seen a lot of quarterbacks throw there. It's different when Deshaun Watson throws the football. If you're simply talking about spinning the football, it's it's the most impressive thing I've seen as a quarterback in terms of spinning it. So we'll see what happens. But that's, once again, I think that allows you, in my opinion, Shedeur did enough. There's enough to like about Dylan, especially with his ability he's played a ton of games. Deshaun Watson's talent. You better go out and get some linemen. You better get some receivers. Unless you think Fernando Mendoza is an all in and we're going to start from bare bones and we're going to get Mendoza, which usually leads to non-success because you don't have anything around him. So that would be my guess. But yeah, Deshaun Watson spinning the football is pretty impressive. But, part of what he does is his feet. And how much more can that body take beating moving forward?
Okay, let's get back to things people want to hear about now, I guess. I didn't prep you for this, so I'm curious what you're going to say. And I have an answer, and I'm sort of feeling like you're going to have the same answer, but let's see. Which Browns offensive player, not a quarterback, which Browns offensive players should be the happiest that Todd Monken just got hired?
Wow, that would be so. I will start with, if we say all 9 quarterbacks, I'm going to say Harold Fannin. And
That was going to be mine too. Yeah.
so I would say Harold Fannin, and I'll say a sleeper guy, is going to be Sampson. If you look at Zay Flowers out with the Ravens, not that they're the same, and Zay Flowers is a receiver, but he's an undersized receiver that could do a lot of different things. So is Sampson. And one of the things I was impressed with him and Junkins, but really with Sampson, is his ability to play in the slot. And if you remember when they first started, they did all kinds of motions and movements. They didn't do that a lot with him during the season. I'm not sure why. So I would say, obviously, Junkins is going to be downhill, and he'll be great, and that'll be good. New O-line coach is fantastic. Everybody's going to like him. He's very Callahan-like in his discipline. I can't wait to watch practice. But I would say Harold Fannin, just because of his formation flexibility in it. That's what Monken does well. So he'll figure out ways to. That's why they need a couple other guys. He'll figure out ways to get Fannin on who he wants them to get him on week to week. He'll also figure out ways to get the ball to Sampson in space. And for me, now Sampson's not a tailback. He's not a slot receiver. Sampson now becomes a touch guy. And that's what I think of Zay Flowers. He's a touch guy. So don't be surprised if you see Sampson running more routes. And you don't be surprised if he's part of RPOs and all kinds of different stuff that you could do with the guy in space, because I thought he was pretty explosive at the end of the year. But if I had to pick one, it'd be Harold Fannin, because he can do so many different things. And that's what Monken does really, really well.
Yeah, well, and I think the interesting thing with Fannin is there's some proof of concept there already. Like the one thing I think that you can't argue against is this former Browns offensive staff really tried to unlock Harold Fannin in a lot of different ways. And sometimes it might have been too much, but I think they just felt like, let's throw as much as we can at this guy and see what he can handle. And it usually worked out pretty well. Obviously, I know he had the fumble on the one direct snap and it wasn't always perfect, but like, we saw this proof of concept that Harold Fannin isn't just line up a tight end and go run a route. It was, we can put you in the backfield. We can put you in a bunch of different places. So again, Todd's going to sit here and watch that film and he's going to say, okay, look at this. They like to call him a chess piece, or the queen on the chessboard. Look at this guy. Look at all the things I can do with him.
Yeah, and if you I'll give you an example. If you take Harold Fannin, I've been doing kind of a cut up on him, and I evaluated him. And there's a play, the last play before he got hurt, that corner route that he caught for a touchdown. So he was out at receiver running the corner route, and then they had another tight end running the arrow route. So throughout the year, and then on the backside, they had a curl flat if they had a different coverage, maybe a cover 3 or whatever they do. They had a dual side read there. Well, during the year, I've seen Fannin run all 4 routes, which is pretty impressive. I've seen him run the 7. I've seen him run the arrow. I've seen him run a curl. I've seen him run a dig. I've seen him run a late route. I've seen him run from tight end, from 1, 2, and 3 strong, out of the backfield, motion. So, yeah, that's pretty, when you look at what he can do, that's a matchup nightmare. Even if we move him outside and they move a linebacker outside, the coverage. That's the simplest way to look at it. He allows you to create a clear picture for the quarterback, and that's awesome.
And then you mentioned Quinshawn. That was kind of the other thing that I looked at. So what do you think that we all kind of know the answer to this, like generally what the Browns need, but Todd Monkin, and again, we'll take quarterback out of the equation here, but if Todd Monkin is sitting in Andrew Berry's office today and they're talking about, all right, Todd, what's the one thing I absolutely have to get you? What's your answer?
Got to get him offensive lineman. And I know people want to say receiver, and I will not argue with you. I will not argue with touch guys, space guys, all those kind of things. But football, from high school, college, the NFL, to Pee Wee, to whatever 8-man football, it always starts up front. And if you want to talk about the Browns defense, that's why they were good. So for me, they got to get better up front. They got to stay healthy up front. They got to get back to some nasty football. Their new offensive line coach is very Callahan-like in terms of the constant repetition. You win with reps. You win with the why. Here's why we're doing these things. Here's where the linebacker will be on this play. They got to get younger. They got to get more physical. They got to get more athletic up front. And whatever they got to do to, not only do they have to get, I would be okay with them addressing skill in the draft, and then you go out and you get address the, offensive line, but going out and getting a couple of the veterans that are still in their prime a little bit up front, because if you get a guy who's 26 years old, he's more of a grown man, and that'll help you as well. But they, more than anything else, I don't care what anybody tells me, they got to quarterback, receiver, all those things are great. They got to get better up front.
I don't want to turn this into a draft pod all of a sudden, but you, Tim, and I were texting, I think it was last week, and I kind of threw out this idea of, I don't know if I would complain if they just took a bunch of O linemen with their picks. Like, look, building the trenches is boring, but if you do it and you do it right, you can be really good for a long time. Now, I'm not saying that they have to do what I just suggested, but I don't know. You take the 2 Utah tackles, you find a guard on day 3 who's really good or something like that. Like, it's really boring, but it can change your entire offense if you shore up that O-line.
Well, so all of a sudden, a quarterback has more time. Quarterback has more time to throw the football. He can get through his progressions. He has no pressure. His footwork becomes very good. Receivers now are better now because they have more times to work top of routes. And, there's so many things you can do because you have a run game, because you have good pass protection. The offensive line is, it's boring football. However, if you've ever been involved in the game of football, you just know it's so easy to go out there and you want a Jamar Chase and you want all these guys, because it is. But where you really win in the game of football is, can you be balanced? And balanced doesn't mean I run it and pass it 50% of the time. It means I'm going to do what I want to do on offense on whatever down and distance it is, because that's how much confidence I have in my O-line. That's where the Browns, if you look at when the Browns are successful with Kevin Stefanski, whether you like the offense or not, that's a perfect example that you win with players. They had a stud offensive line and a stud tailback, and it covered anything else up because they could do what they wanted up front. So if you build that offensive line quickly, it'll shorten the amount of time and the type of player. You don't necessarily need a 5-star receiver, but you'd like to get a 4-star, right? Because a 4-star becomes a 5-star if the quarterback has protection.
Okay, look, it wouldn't be a pod with us if we didn't do some kind of draft. And
Yeah,
we were
no, I
talking
love
about it. Yeah, we were talking about it before we hit record. So this is totally impromptu now. A snow day draft, because there's a lot of snow days going on, cold days, whatever you want to call them. And I feel like we're just in this winter wasteland. Every time I look out or drive somewhere, it's just snow everywhere. Our roads are like they're plowed, but there's still like a layer of like just frost or snow on the road. So it's just depressing. But it's good snow day, draft day. So I'll let you, let's try and do 3 rounds, and I'll let you go first.
All right. Well, I'm gonna do the obvious. Snow day, great snow day activity for me is simply staying in whatever you sleep in and just going down in the basement and going movies. Just going, and I'm not,
good.
and going old school movies, right?
Princess Bride,
Yeah. Here's what.
Ghostbusters.
Well, I'll tell you what I'm doing right now that I'm so excited about. And I know my wife isn't. All the James Bonds are on Netflix, so I am a diehard James Bond fan. So
That's good.
Just stay in the comfy. I took my daughter to school, come home. You work, I got my working area down here, got the TV over there, put some James Bond on, or just simply get cozied up and just veg out all day, like waste the day, like you're a wasted human for a day. For me, that's the best.
This isn't a throwback, but are you a John Wick guy?
Oh, of course, you got to love John Wick. I use him as a verb all the time.
I was gonna say, like, if you're looking for just an action series to binge, man, John Wick is you can't go wrong. I was a little late to the John Wick party, but I binged all 4 of them. Unbelievable.
Yeah, me and my family likes the John Wick, and we're excited because my daughter's going to be soon to the age she can watch it. But we often say when things go bad, you can't kill a man's dog. You can't do it, right?
I go, just for the record, I go 2, 1, 3, 4. Those are my rankings of the John Wick movies. Yeah,
interesting. Who's your favorite? Are you a James Bond guy?
No, not a huge James Bond guy, and mostly it's just because I haven't really watched enough of them. But I could probably get into James Bond if I really, committed to the bit. I could probably get into it because I love action movies. I love all that stuff. So yeah, I mean, there's no reason that I'm not a James Bond guy. I just haven't dove in.
Yeah, I'll be pestering you with that one once we start getting to our draft pods and we're talking 2 or 3 times a week again. I'll be getting you with the James Bond. They're fantastic.
Last off season was my action movie off season though. I was watching all sorts of, First Blood. I was just knocking out the action movies like crazy last off season. Okay. I'm gonna go with a pretty obvious one. Snow day activity, sledding.
Sledding's a good one. Yeah. So, my daughter's at the age where she's, wants to sled with her friends, but I don't mind being the ride there and, I'll jump in. Sledding and tubing, very underrated. Obviously when I was young, you're a little bit younger than me, but like you didn't have 5 to 14, we didn't have phones. So
Right.
like if you were home, it was constant sledding. You were outside building forts and sledding.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
sledding is an absolute good one.
And when you talk about getting old, nothing makes you feel older than when you do go and you sled. And it's just things hurt that you didn't even know you had in your body. It's like, it's bad.
All right, this is going to be the older kind of teacher in me, but I'm going to go with snow day activity is catching up. All right.
Yeah,
so we're going to go with catching up on, days where I'm catching up on grades. I'll do some laundry. I'll get the basement clean. I'll get my, I did it today where knew I had a pod with you, after you do a number of pods in your same area, you get a buildup of stuff and notes in front of you. So, just getting organized, getting your life together, getting your things, run to the bank if you need to run to the bank, run to the store because you can never do that. Get an oil change, the things that you kind of skip often. So I'm going to say one of my best things that I love to do besides vegging out is I love to catch up.
There you go. Yeah, that's a good one. Okay, this is kind of a throwback. This is sort of in the vein of your first pick, but I'm just thinking back to when I was a kid and it was a snow day. What was the one thing you always watched? The Price is Right.
Oh, Price is Right. That,
watching those daytime game shows. And
well,
Price
I think
is
it's
Right
because
was the big one.
Because you knew you weren't supposed to be watching it. You knew you were supposed to be at school. Price is Right. The Bob Barker with the little mic and just completely being inappropriate at all times. It was
just feels like a snow day. It's a snow day show. Just okay. Before I start watching the James Bond movies, I'm gonna watch Price is Right.
Oh, I'm with you. All right. So my last kind of thing that if I'm going to do a snow day. So first thing I want to do is nothing, right? If that's possible.
Fair.
Then I want to catch up. And then if not, this kind of goes back to like the COVID kind of thing. I like to do some cooking. And I don't mind, like, I like to do a little cooking. I got a Blackstone a couple years ago that I love because you can do breakfast, lunch, and dinner on it. So I've also dabbled, not from scratch, but like a little bit of baking, pretty soothing, some cookies. My daughter likes to do some of that stuff. So it would be baking, but it would more be our cooking, but stuff that like my daughter likes to do, because as you know, with kids, they get to a certain age, and when my daughter wants to do something with me, I'm always a yes, because those become less and less, right? Those become less and less and less. So for me, I'm just going to say cooking, but activities with my daughter, whatever she wants to do. If she wants to go to a Target and walk around or whatever it is, something that doesn't seem like a lot, but just kind of hanging out with my kid. And even if my wife's home, because she's in education too, that was always fun too. Just kind of hang out, maybe go somewhere, get a bite to eat. But yeah, I'm going to say some type of cooking, food, eating, baking, something in that realm. I love it.
So I think this draft is great because like you're drafting for now because you're like, you still get snow days, right? Like you're in education, so you get snow days, and I'm drafting from when like I was 14. So well, you're baking, you're catching up, you're doing responsible things. I'm sitting around watching The Price is Right.
Well, actually, here's the bad. As we said, we always talk about things we talk about before we get on. It's the one thing in my life at my age where I'm closer to retirement than anybody else, but I still get excited like I'm the 14-year-old kid. And there's not a bigger letdown in the world. That's why I don't do it anymore. When there's a thought of a snow day and then there's no snow day. That's one of the top letdowns in the history of a 14-year-old kid. It's like regardless. And I was like, oh, I got to go to school. Well, yeah, go to work. Don't be. Yeah, I'm with you. No, you're right, and I'm living it right now for sure.
So my last pick is going to be along these lines again. My last pick is going to be playing video games.
Oh yeah, I'm not a video game.
Well, so my next door neighbor, when I was a kid, we did not have a Nintendo when I was a kid. Like we didn't have it. We had an Atari, and then once the Atari phased out, we didn't have whatever this next generation was. So we didn't have anything. But my next door neighbor had a Nintendo. And nice. So I'd go over, it was a snow day. I'm going over to his house, spending the whole day there, and we're playing old Tecmo Bowl, not Super Tecmo Bowl, the old one with the 4 plays. And so
down B, down C, down B, down C.
Exactly. So we're playing Tecmo Bowl, we're playing, I think we played Double Dribble, like all the, like any Nintendo sports game we could get our hands on.
What
so
video game?
That was our snow day thing.
What video game either on a system, Nintendo, Sega, old school, or at the arcade, if you get one video game you could play the rest of your life, what game are you playing?
Oh man, I'm torn on this. If it's one for the
You
rest
only
of
get
my life,
you only get one, and
because a
you
part of
have
me
it.
wants to say a sports game, but I know what the greatest of all time is that I would want to play. I'm going to say it. GoldenEye on the
Oh,
Nintendo 64.
see, I am all about, well, two. One, when I was in high
Speaking of
school.
James Bond,
That's
GoldenEye.
right, Goldeneye. So I have my second place without question used to be Contra. Do you remember Contra?
I do. We never played it, but I remember. Oh,
Oh,
here's why I remember Contra. Because the game we played a lot, aside from Tecmo Bowl, was Blades of Steel,
yeah,
the hockey game. And in between
yeah,
periods, they would have ads. And one of the
yes,
ads was for Contra.
love Contra. But if you give me a game that I could play only one game the rest of my life, I'm absolutely, without question, going Donkey Kong. Got to go Donkey Kong. Oh,
That's not bad. That's
I
fine.
love me. You know what? The Galago is really good. Galaga was a huge one for me too. You get up there, start flying around. Yeah, I'm a big Galaga fan too. And I learned a trick on Galaga where they don't shoot bullets anymore, but you have to be really patient. And I forgot what it was, but we did it when we were younger. So yeah, it wouldn't be a sport. I like the sports game, but I don't know. I got away from the sports games because I was maybe always, I don't know why, but Galaga, Donkey Kong, those are kind of Contra. Those are my things for sure.
Well, the other part of it is you kind of got to live the sports game thing where you actually got to call real plays and like.
Oh man, yeah, maybe I just got away from it.
Maybe that was it.
Right.
Maybe you were just like, why do I want to call plays on Madden? I can do it in real life.
Yeah, that's true. I never thought of it like that. Maybe I was just like, I got to get away from that. And I've always liked to have other things that I like to do. I like to go to plays and I like to do different stuff besides the football part of it because that takes up so much. Maybe that was like an unconscious thing. I like that.
I still feel good about GoldenEye. The more I think about it, just an amazing game. I need to find a copy of it. I need to find like an old N64 and a copy of that.
Do you remember Pong? Pong was such a great game. Just a great, I know these games now are, I look at some of the stuff my daughter plays, there's Roadblocks and she's building stuff.
Oh yeah, Roadblocks.
It is something else. She'd be like, Dad, look at this. And I'm like, I played Pong. When I was your age, I was playing Pong. Tells you how old I am.
I need one side, another side, and something to hit back and forth. That's what I understand.
That's where I'm at. That's why you're the student you are, and that's why I was the student I was, right? That's the difference there, right?
I bet Todd Monkin knows some Pong. We'll have to bring that up.
No question about it. I cannot wait to get down. Obviously you guys will be talking to him soon. I look forward to, kind of seeing how he is with you guys and seeing how he is out in the practice field. And I look forward to, obviously I started with Kevin, so I'm looking forward to see how practice is different. I want to see how the O-line stuff works, so we'll have some good pods because we've dealt with practice and the way things run. Ever since I started working with you, we've kind of been the same MO. So I'm looking forward to the change as well.
All right. Well, we will we'll get to that as this offseason goes along. Of course, you and Tim and I will be doing some draft pods as we get closer to the draft, and I'm sure I'll call you. I'll call your name up from the bullpen here at some point over the next few weeks. We'll have you on as much as we can here over the next few weeks. That is Lance Reisland. This was the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. Find us on Instagram, Orange and Brown Talk, Twitter, Orange Brown Talk, and our YouTube is Cleveland Browns on cleveland.com. For Mary Kay, Ashley, and Lance, I'm Dan. Thanks for listening, everybody.